Today, we are talking with one of the most powerful voices in Washington when it comes to naval readiness and the industrial base.
Listen, we have to homeport more ships in Norfolk. That's the simple, straightforward solution. And as you said, as new DDGs get commissioned, they need to be assigned to Norfolk. What I try to emphasize is that, all of the things that make the headlines are things like new ship construction, new ship classes, new technology there. And while that is attractive, it is not the fundamental element of what's needed to sustain the fleet.
Right.
When you purchase ships, you're doing multi-ship purchases. We ought to be doing multi-ships when we do contracting for maintenance.
Welcome to Ship Repair Radio, the official podcast of the Virginia Ship Repair Association. I'm John Polowczyk, president of the Virginia Ship Repair Association and your host. Today, we are talking with one of the most powerful voices in Washington when it comes to naval readiness and the industrial base. Joining me is Congressman Rob Wittman, who represents Virginia's 1st District. As the Vice Chairman of the House Armed Services Committee and the co-chair of the Congressional Shipbuilding Caucus, Congressman Wittman has been a relentless advocate for our men and women in uniform and a staunch defender of the private shipyards right here in Hampton Roads. Congressman, thank you for being on the show today.
John, great to be with you.
And I cannot thank you enough for carving out time. You just had a very busy week, and we'll get into some of that. And great to hear that you made some visits on our wonderful Department of Veterans Affairs facilities here, and then you do that for a very specific reason to make sure our veterans are getting the best care. So, as a veteran, I deeply appreciate your commitment. But Congressman, let me get into this for our listeners. You and I have talked on multiple occasions, and one of the things you do that we've talked about that I think you're very passionate about is to stop this 1v1v1 contract methodology that the Navy's been using here for a decade plus. And why aren't we doing things like we do in the rest of major acquisition? Why aren't we bundling things, right? And I know I know you have an opinion of that, and I'd love for our listeners to hear from you, your opinions on how that might help.
Yeah. Well, listen, I think it goes a long ways because in every other aspect of the military, we do that. When you purchase ships, you're doing multi-ship purchases. We ought to be doing multi-ships when we do contracting for maintenance. And if you really want to be able to manage in the best way possible time and schedule,
Right,
and the industrial capacity and grow the maritime industrial base, which everybody talks about wanting to do, yet they don't do the meaningful things that actually sends the demand signal that lets people invest and lets these repair yards have multiple places where they can go and get supplies and parts for ship repair. And also it makes that much more predictable. So we have to be able to let contracts for multiple ships, especially ships in the same class. There's no reason why you can't take a Flight 3 DDG and said, let's get a contract going on the whole suite of them that are coming through in the next 3 or 4 years.
you mentioned demand signal, right? These one by one send little tiny demand signals.
Yeah.
Right. I think bundling would send a larger demand signal.
Yeah.
And if you put all that on contract, I mean the private industry guys tell you to talk about all the things you're going to do is one thing. They need contracts.
Got to have contracts, and listen, and we're in the dark ages when it comes to contracts. Now, the good news is they're developing something called Ship OS, Ship Operating System by Palantir, which is going to be very much data-based in how we both build and maintain ships. What we have to do from that, John, is we have to advance how we contract for ships, and that's essentially a dynamic contract mode.
Right.
Make sure that you have the ability to quickly, if there are unexpected things in the repair scope that come up, like having to replace a valve you didn't expect or coat a tank that you didn't expect,
Right.
make sure that you have automatically executable elements in that contract. Make sure, too, that you're using these AI tools like Ship OS to scope the work, and then make sure, too, that you're using AI to draw up the contracts. I mean, the folks in NAVC need to be focusing on the work,
Yes.
not the paperwork, the work at the
The
yard.
work, right? So one of my, you bring up technology. That's one of my observations, having been the president of Virginia Ship Repair Association, VSRA, now for going on, been here going on a kind of year this summer.
Mhm.
Um, Limited to no Industry 4.0 technology coming from a large Big Four consulting firm,
Mhm.
and I chose the consulting firm because it was doing amazing digital things for manufacturing and supply chain. And then I come to Virginia Ship Repair Association, and there's essentially zero information exchange like that between the government and private yards. Bundling is one thing.
Mhm.
Um, uh, the other is technology.
Yes. Yeah, technology and data collection, there's no reason why we shouldn't be taking every bit of data that we've collected on past ship maintenance availabilities, putting that into a database, using that to predictively model what future ships are going to require. Another thing too is there's no reason why on critical systems we shouldn't be putting sensors on ships to sense when we have a degradation of the capability of that system. And then, by the way, some of those things can be done at sea. Think about that when the ship comes to the yard, and some of those things have been prepped so when it gets to the yard, it stays on schedule and stays on budget.
Yeah, I hope you transmit these messages to Navy leaders, because I they say they're doing things.
Mhm.
We just haven't seen it yet, right?
Well, the key is there's always great intentions there, John. The challenge is to actually see those things executed. And listen, I think NAVC does some really good stuff, but also in other places you look at it and go, folks, you have to get in the 21st century. I mean,
They do. So let me go to another topic that's near and dear. Is, it's the workload. And
yes.
I've been in this movie for a long time, and the work in the Port of Norfolk, the work here in Virginia, um, over the last 12, 15 years, the numbers of surface ships in the home port of Norfolk has gone down by about 50%.
Yeah.
We decommissioned the cruisers, we decommissioned the frigates, we didn't build a frigate, we put ships over in Rhoda.
Yeah.
The Florida delegation glommed on to some ships, and again, things moved down to Mayport. And really, Norfolk, I don't think has gotten a new DDG since, I think, 2011 is the number I can come up with.
Mhm.
To me, the consequential issue for Hampton Roads is this ship and workload
Yeah.
decline. And I don't see any other solution but more ships home ported in Norfolk to arrest that. But I open that up to you, sir, to kind of give your view from the congressional perspective.
Listen, we have to home port more ships in Norfolk. That's the simple, straightforward solution. And as you said, as new DDGs get commissioned, they need to be assigned to Norfolk. And if you look at how carrier strike groups deploy, if you look at how DESRONs deploy, it just makes sense to have them here, especially where they have to go in this AOR. If you're going to send a ship to Rhoda and then it becomes part of the forward deployed naval forces, the question is then where is that ship assigned to get maintenance done? And the challenge is it doesn't end up in Hampton Roads.
Right? It doesn't
So
come back.
exactly. So if you're going to do FD&F, then follow the requirements under FD&F, and that is some of that work can be done overseas. But when it goes to a deep dive maintenance, it's supposed to come back to the United States. And we've seen ships like the McCain, when it had the collision, guess what? We looked at the history there. It hadn't been back to the United States in almost 20 years. So they're not enforcing the requirements even when a ship does become part of the forward deployed naval forces. So we have to make sure we push that and say you are
Right.
going to meet that requirement, and then make sure too that they assign those ships that are in places like Rhoda to Hampton Roads to get repaired. And we have to, as new ships come in the inventory, whether it's amphibs or any of the surface ships, and we're going to be going down a road of next generation
Yeah,
of
of course,
surface ships.
I mostly care about non-nuclear surface ship work,
Sure.
right? Because the nuclear stuff goes over into the
It
public
does.
yards, which some of my members work on.
Sure, and listen, and the amphibs are important here too.
Yes,
So the
amphibious is very
LPDs, the
important.
large deck amphibs, those need to come back here as well as the DDGs. So that we have to do that, and what we have to do is to get the Navy to commit And what's happened in the past is we have a commitment, but then when it comes time, the commitment's not followed up with.
Yeah, I applauded the CNO for the 30-year shipbuilding plan. There is a lot of goodness in there, but I do worry that the numbers continue to be against us. I think in the first 5 years of the 30-year shipbuilding plan, there are 30 decommissionings and
28. Yeah.
28
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
hulls,
Yep.
right? So that doesn't help. I guess so that, the Navy's nowhere near the 355 ships that they say they need. I guess the answer is to really get after shipbuilding.
You have to get after shipbuilding, but another thing too, John, that we have to do is that if we are going to have the Navy that we need, we're going to have to take some ships and extend their service life.
Right.
So you have to look at a DDG expected service life and say, well, this ship right here is in material condition, HM&E, hull, mechanical, electrical, that we can get another 5 years out of it if you put the money in when it's on a maintenance avail. So I think another thing we need to do too is to make these maintenance avails much deeper dive as far as the work that's done. And then don't let these ships get out of the yard with any uncompleted work. And what's happened with change orders in the past is they just, NAVC just blows past and goes, oh, we can't meet schedule on this. So we're just going to bypass this stuff.
And there is a real tension there between schedule, and the unplanned work.
Yeah.
And money is somewhat at the heart of that, but really, the fleet maintenance officer and the senior leaders at Fleet Forces will tell you, they need the ASABO of the
Yes.
of the ships to be able to meet the insatiable demand for naval forces. Things, I'm gonna pivot to the money thing here because I know you just had a long week and there's a lot going on.
Yes.
If you can just kind of give us a rundown, and I came and saw you
Yes.
during that last week where I talked about you got to fund the fleet,
Yes.
got to fund the fleet, and there are there's supplemental in front of you. I know the House passed the Authorization Act, and then there's SHIPS Act stuff in there, but then there's maybe still we might be facing a CR, the increased top line. There is a lot of pressures across the board there, but if you can give us, kind of where are we on on providing the stable funding
Sure.
for the fleet, which I think is what everybody wants.
It is, and listen, and we've made some major progress in what we need to do for ship repair in this year's NDAA. So, and the same on shipbuilding side, 60 billion plus. We've plussed up maintenance accounts. I also have language in there on IDIQ, which is indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, which gives us a lot of flexibility there to do the things that we need to do. So NDAA is going to give a good shot in the arm to both maintenance and the build side. The challenge is how do we get to that appropriation that actually enables that?
Yes.
So the bridge is, in the interim, is the reconciliation bill that has about $60 billion in restoring readiness accounts. So for the fleet, what this means is working hard to restore weapons magazine depth, which is going to take a little bit of time. And the other is just readiness accounts for deployments.
Yes.
So that helps sort of tangentially in making sure these ships get deployed and that they can stay on schedule for maintenance avails and those things. Lastly is the CR, and we did pass a clean CR, which means no anomalies, which means nothing to continue construction on things like Columbia and other ships, which doesn't seem to necessarily have a direct effect on the maintenance yards, but it does because everything else that's new gets stopped. The good news is that the supplemental did pass, which is $60 billion additional dollars. On the other side, though, the CR funds at last year's base budget level, which is $910 billion. So if you add the 60 to that, you get close to $1 trillion. But this year's NDAA is on the House side is $1.15 trillion. And then, the additional effort to get us to 1.5 was $350 billion. That's supposed to come in another reconciliation bill, which allegedly is going to happen after the election. What the Pentagon has said, I went over and met with Secretary Hegseth week before last, and we talked about that. And I said, well, how do you reconcile the $60 billion, the $910 base budget, This year's 1.15, and then what you want to do to get to 1.5, what they're saying is a 350, the 350 billion, which
Right.
would be in the next reconciliation bill, would be sans the 60 billion that's in the reconciliation 3.0. So essentially 290 billion additional dollars is necessary. All the things that need to happen with our advancements in ship repair and modernization are contained in that reconciliation.
Reconciliation bill.
So anyway, so there's a lot to be done. We are just treading water with what was done last week. Just treading water.
More. Yes, yeah, because the fact of the matter is, and this is why I came to see you, the Navy took money out of depot maintenance
Yes.
to go put it towards operations. So that's one cut at maintenance.
Right.
The fleet will tell you that they started 26 with a shortfall because we never fully fund depot maintenance. The requirement is here, and we do something underneath that because that's what we do to try to make all the ends meet. That's the comptroller in me.
Yes.
It's coming out, but that's the fact. So you start under,
Sure.
then you take a bunch of money, and so the fleet really does need a insertion of cash so we can get after this. Then you think about those ships have been out there. There are ships that are making 11 plus month deployments.
Yes.
There is a reset needed, and so what you're talking about isn't going to happen in near term. I worry that we're going to get to a point in the first quarter going into January that the fleet's going to not have enough money to reset the force.
Listen, I think that's a real possibility, especially too when you're looking at backfilling accounts now that you've had to go to in order to sustain these deployments in an ops tempo in the Persian Gulf area that is just intense.
It's not going to get any better anytime soon.
Exactly. So those are the demand signals there. And two, if you need additional resources to really get out of the fleet what you need out of the fleet, it means not just meeting what is in a structured, predictive maintenance model, but it's also saying, what can we do to get additional service life out of these ships?
Yes.
That's the only way that you do this.
Yes.
Which means you have to adjust budgets, you have to adjust maintenance schedules to say, what can we do there? That's why this new technology and being able to predict what we need with these ships is going to be so key. And I think it'll at least give a better tool for the Navy.
You're getting into my next question.
Yes.
Right? So it's like, given the state of the fleet, given that we need to tweak some of the ways we do acquisition for repair, the new technology, we've talked about more ships. I don't know where do you land up when you talk to Navy leaders, when you talk to other members of Congress, and you talk to them about ship repair, and certainly to be able to support the Hampton Roads area. What do you tell them? What's the consequential issue from your perspective that you're trying to work on and get through to other members of Congress?
Well, what I try to emphasize is that, all of the things that make the headlines are things like new ship construction, new ship classes, new technology there. And while that is attractive, it is not the fundamental element of what's needed to sustain the fleet.
Right.
And what I tell them is if you disregard ship repair, you will never get to the number of ships that you need. So I try to get people to refocus where they need to go and get away from the shiny objects with the shipbuilding and get to the really
the thing that's
stuff.
giving you more ASABO.
Exactly.
ASABO today.
ASABO today is directly relatable to maintenance avails and how we meet both schedule on maintenance avails and how we meet scope of work in maintenance avails. And a lot of times scope of work gets reduced. Schedules get elongated for a whole variety of reasons. And we could talk all day about some of the things that need to happen procedurally with entities like Marmac and others. I mean, we have to fix that. But fundamentally, it goes back to NAVC, and NAVC needs to be a better manager of ship work. They need to use technology. that'll make them better at understanding how do they get out in front of
It's a
this.
good thing of having these conversations with them, and I've had them I've had some of the leaders on the podcast, and they all are trying to work on those things. And me personally, I wish it was done here in the rearview mirror, that they were, these things were already, in the fleet and being used. I have to give them credit. They've seen it. They understand. I think they understand it, and they're trying to work on it and get them to sooner. Um, Either I appreciate your time and your willingness to come on the Ship Repair Radio podcast and talk about these things. I want to give you the last word and just leave people with, what is Congressman Wittman working on for our members? Or however you want to couch it, right? I'm going to give you the last word.
Well, listen, the Virginia Ship Repair Association is absolutely incredible. Your members there, which continue to grow, are the foundation of what we need to keep this fleet at sea and to defend this nation. So first of all, thank you to your members. Second of all, is your members are probably one of the most active groups that I've come across in my time in Congress. So their activity, their engagement is incredibly important. And what we want to do is to make sure we enhance the ability to engage not just people like myself, but others there
Right.
that maybe aren't aware of what goes into ship repair and why it's so critical to the nation. And then in turn, why things like homeporting are incredibly important to this region. So I think that, what I want to encourage folks to do is to not only continue to stay in touch with our office and continue to be as active as VSRA is, but to expand that scope
Right.
as you've done. And you've done a great job since being here as the director of getting out there and talking to other offices and getting this on their radar screens. And then going there with a specific ask. It's great for them to say, oh yeah, there is such thing as a ship repair. But to go in and say, this is what we do.
Right.
This is why it's incredibly important to the nation. And this is what you need to do for us if you're serious about even issues that may not be directly related to ship repair. But if you're serious about workforce, if you're serious about reindustrializing the nation, if you're serious about the industrial base, you got to get involved in this.
Yeah. I know you have I'm gonna get you to say it. I know you have a thought on workforce. You say something like 3 E's, or
Yeah,
how do you say that?
I do. I tell folks, our school systems need to be focused on the 3 E's.
3 E's.
3 E's: enlistment, enrollment, or employment.
Employment.
And those are the 3 E's. And if school systems aren't focused on that, then they're missing the boat. And I can tell you, we have a lot of students that are great experiential learners that don't need to be, and nothing wrong with college, but they don't need to be going to college. Their skill sets are different. How do we engage them? How do we get them the certifications and credentials we need for what I call the top 3 issues here in the industrial base? Defense industrial base, maritime industrial base. The top 3 issues are workforce, workforce, and workforce.
Yeah, I agree with you. So, sir, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the conversation and sharing what's going on, and your thoughts on how to make this better. And I look forward to working with you as we go forward. Um, Again, I can't thank you enough, Congressman Wittman, for your advocacy for the Commonwealth and your advocacy for the Virginia Ship Repair members. To our listeners, if you liked what you heard, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite platform. Send us your comments and ideas for future episodes to radio@virginiashiprepair.org. That's radio@virginiashiprepair.org. Thank you for listening. And, sir, thank you for being here.
Thank you, John.